Hey everybody, welcome back to another All Things MSP Live. We have a great show for you tonight, and we're so glad that you decided to spend your Valentine's Day or watching this in a recording. But anyway, I digress. Tonight we have a great show. We're going to be talking about events, but not just events that you go to. We're going to be talking about events that you might hold for your clients and prospects as well. Now, I think that this is some great content. We're going to dig into some very practical things, not only of things that you should do to prepare and things to do at a trade show, a show that you would attend. And we're going to have, in addition to that, we're going to have stuff about events that you might put on for clients and prospects. So some really great information tonight. Hold on to your hats. But first, a word from our sponsors. Hey everybody, don't forget that we do have merchandise. So head on over to atmsp.link/merch and you can pick yourself up a t-shirt, a hoodie, maybe a puzzle. And a big thank you to tonight's sponsor, SuperOps. SuperOps is an AI-based PSA RMM tool for fast-growing MSPs. You can check them out at atmsp.link/SuperOps, or you can check out one of their 6 Super Summits this year. This year's Super Summits are being held in New Orleans, Louisiana, Tampa, Florida, Dallas, Texas, Kelowna, British Columbia, Los Angeles, California, and Tampa, Florida. So catch a Super Summit near you. For more information, go to atmsp.link/Super Summit. And don't forget, after this live stream, if you haven't had enough of MSP content, you can head on over to Uncle Marv's IT Business Podcast. Tonight, he's featuring Karen Knabb, an executive leadership coach. So after this live stream, head on over there at 8 p.m. Eastern and watch Uncle Marv. All right, well, we are just about ready to get started. Give us a few more minutes to straighten things out here on the back end of StreamYard. Not that it's difficult, but I just need an excuse for the clock to continue to run out. But I will be back in just a minute to start the show. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of All Things MSP Live. Great show as always tonight. We have Jennifer Bleam on tonight from MSPsalesrevolution.com. And we're going to talk about events, but we're going to talk about them in a little bit different way than we normally talk about events. We're going to go specifically into, why you should do events, but then we're going to go into the framework for how you should treat an event, how you might prepare for it, what you might expect to get out of it, and most importantly, how to plan to get the most out of it. And then we're going to talk about the piece that we almost never talk about, and that is creating your own events, having events for clients and prospects for using to, get more sales. So with that, I do want to say that, by the way, tonight's episode is sponsored by SuperOps. So if you haven't checked them out lately, you can use our link, atmsp.link/SuperOps. All right, now I'm going to bring to the stage Jennifer Bleam.
Hey,
How are you?
thank you. I am doing so well, and I'm so excited because somebody said that fluent sarcasm is welcome here, and I am 100% fluent in sarcasm. Sarcasm and snark, I've got those both handled. So this is going to be a ton of fun.
Yep. So I have to say this just because it's Facebook, right? Facebook, if you're chatting in the group onto the live stream, I can't tell who you are. So that's one of the problems with Facebook. And I don't know, Facebook has gotten weird. Have you heard about the stuff that's going on with Facebook?
That they're getting rid of the like API
The
integrations or
API for
something.
groups.
Yeah. So that makes me wonder, like you use StreamYard, I use whatever the other one is, it starts with a D that just left my brain that we were talking about 10 minutes ago. I don't know if they're still going to work, and Facebook has not answered that question, at least as of a couple of days ago.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's so strange to me.
So, but by the way, I did know who it was. It's Keith Nelson, who everybody in this industry knows. He's been on the show.
When I saw that he was aimlessly wandering around, I figured it was Keith saying that.
Yep. So I actually got to see, because I usually check, while we're getting ready, that, we're actually live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So I saw that it was him. So good evening, Keith. Glad you're here, as always, to help keep the comments rolling. And he has now switched to YouTube. So now I can tell that it's him.
I love it.
Oh, I love this audience. This community is great.
I agree. So much fun.
So, Jennifer, for those who don't know you, which it's hard to believe that anybody would not know you in this space, but go ahead and tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer Bleam. I am a sales and marketing coach in the space, and I have a pretty long history in this industry. My husband is still a managed service provider, business owner. I helped him with his marketing and sales for a couple of years, and then jumped over to the vendor side, helped one vendor grow a pretty new offer to a couple $1 million in year and a half or so, and then went to a cybersecurity vendor and helped them grow to about 4-ish million. And then we got acquired by Continuum. Continuum is now ConnectWise. And amidst all of the shakeout of the acquisition, after I made sure the clients were taken care of and that all the systems were connected and things like that, that's when I started my own coaching and consulting company. So I work with MSPs that are $500,000 in annual revenue and up, and I help them put in place a proven marketing and sales system. It's what I do all day long, and I love it.
And you also run an event.
I do. So I've got an event called the Ultimate IT Growth Conference. This year it's in May in Dallas, Texas. And it's 2.5 days of very hands-on workshop-like content. And what it is designed for is to help organizations get to the $5 million in cybersecurity revenue as quickly as they can. Because what I'm seeing is that there's a pretty big delta between, 100K, 200K, 300K a year, and 5 million. and some of that, there are differences in mindset. There's differences in their sales systems and how they look at marketing, how they think about marketing. And so that those 2.5 days, I'm going to essentially download into everybody's brains those systems, those processes, so that people can get to that $5 million magic number as quickly as they possibly can. So again, Ultimate IT Growth Conference, it's May 6, 7, and 8. We've got a cool networking event and mixer the first night, and then 2 full days of jam-packed sessions. And we're limiting it to about 200 people. So it's going to be very, very comfortable. We're going to have a lot of open mic. There's a workbook. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. So Keith is commenting. He says that I'm helping Harry Brailsford with an event. Everybody knows Harry.
Yeah.
Surprised he wants me to speak, but I was amazed on how many MSPs make under $1 million.
Yes.
And that's absolutely true. Jennifer, you and I have both worked for vendors, so we both have seen the back end of the clients or of the partners and seen how many of those partners are small. But the one thing that I would say about that is that, yes, they might be small partners, but that is who is addressing the small to medium-sized business market that is growing the fastest.
Yes.
of all the different segments of the economy. So it's really important that we still cater to those MSPs.
100%. And the other challenge is that when you're smaller and you're trying to get your marketing and your sales off the ground, and when I say smaller, I'm really thinking anything below the $2 million mark. Below $2 million, a lot of the marketing, probably most of the sales, is falling on the owner's plate. So that means that owner has a lot of different hats they're wearing, but that means they need marketing tactics and strategies that are efficient and effective, because they don't have time to waste on trial and error and let's just try this for 6 months and see if it works. That doesn't work for most MSPs. So I was having a conversation with an MSP I think this was like 3 weeks ago, and he shared that he dropped $100,000 in 2023 on direct mail. And I'm like, $100,000. And I'm like, that's a pretty significant spend,
Yeah.
like pretty unusual. And I said, well, how'd that work for you? And he said, I got 3 opportunities. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, I closed 1. And I'm like, okay, well, great close rate. Good close rate, 1 out of 3. I'd like to see it higher, but 1 out of 3, at least it wasn't 0. But I'm like, what were your lessons learned? And he said his most crucial lesson learned was, don't wait for 12 months to look back and do a look back or a marketing autopsy or a debrief, whatever you call it, because 12 months of, you've got the money, that is a factor. You've got the sweat equity, big factor. Yep. And then you have time. Like, that's 12 months of lost opportunity, 12 months of time that none of us can get back. And he's like, I stayed busy, and I thought that busy equaled effective. And it wasn't until the end of the year that he's like, we just spent a boatload of money. That's a significant chunk of money. And so that's a great lesson for all of us to learn, is, to spend a little more time in reflection, a little more thinking time, which is very difficult to come by when you're smaller and you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yep. But you got to make time. Anyway.
You have to make the time. You do.
Speaking of making time.
Yes.
You need to make time for events, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. I want to start us out by kind of asking you kind of a story question, if you will, about what was like kind of the moment, and if, maybe tell us the event or whatever, but the moment when you got it, when the light bulb came on about how and why events work.
Yeah, so I want to take this from the perspective of being an MSP and attending events. Is that okay if we go that direction to start? Please. And then keep me honest, and we can go the other direction as well. So, like a lot of things in life, I I think I overlooked my superpower when it came to events. I just thought everybody went to events and attended events the same way that I did, and that they had their own structure and their own framework. And I realized that they didn't. And the moment I realized that, I was coming home from a quarterly peer group of MSPs, similar sized, $500,000, give or take a little. We were all in non-competing markets. So great, great, great conversation and iron sharpening iron. And I take a boatload of notes over the couple 3 days. I think it was a 2-day event. And then I flew home on the airplane and applied my framework to my notes. And we showed up for our accountability group Monday morning. And I'm like, all right, who's got their top 3 things that they're going to work on? Who's funneled things out to their team members? Who has things like put away on the someday list? And like these were all pretty mature business owners, but I got deer in the headlights. They're like, how in the world, like we just left a day and a half ago. How did you get all of this done already? And I'm like, well, what do you do with the notes that you take at events? And they're like, we put them in a box. And I'm like, well, that's not super effective. And they're like, we don't know what else to do with them. And I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you. And it was probably the first time that I realized, hey, I've got some IP up in my head, some intellectual property, and it's really fun to teach because it's simple. And so I'm going to teach it in the next 3 minutes. And this is going to change the way that you look at events. So we all, hopefully most of us, take pages of notes, whether it's physical, which I think is best. I mean, my physical is now an electronic notepad, but just from a science standpoint, taking notes with a pen actually connects to your brain. But you can also type it. You can put it in OneNote, Evernote, whatever, doesn't matter. But as you're going through, what I want you to do is either star the good ideas or circle the good ideas or something. Doesn't matter. Just somehow flag the good ideas. And then either at night when you're in your hotel room or on the plane on your way back, list out all of the good ideas. So it's a little harder on electronic. It's a little easier on a legal pad. But I just want you to list them A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Like we all know our alphabet. Just list them. You're going to probably have 30, maybe 40 really good ideas. Then I want you to do a 2x2 grid. Just 4 little squares. Kind of looks like a Gartner Magic Quadrant if you're geeky like me and you know what a Gartner Magic Quadrant is, but it's just a 2x2 grid. And you're going to label your axes ease of execution with hard to easy. So you want hard like in the bottom corner, and then effectiveness. Like just what's your gut instinct say effectiveness? Now, I've had people quibble with me over effectiveness because they're like, well, that's kind of vague. And I'm like, that's because every business is focused on something different. If you're focused on profitability, how much is this idea going to affect or impact profitability? High impact on the top, low impact on the bottom. If you desperately need leads, how much is this idea going to impact lead flow? Highly impactful, low impact. And then you take your A through Z and you just stick them in whatever quadrant they go. Ignore the bottom left. Low likelihood of impacting what you needed to impact, and it's hard. Right. Let's not do those things today. They're hard. Maybe we do them later. Maybe we gain skills to make them easier. Maybe we hire someone to make them easier. Maybe AI comes along to make it easier. Like, I don't know, but can we not focus on the hard, low leverage activities and instead focus on the upper right? Hey, I can do this. And it's going to move the needle. And usually if you walk out of every event, you're going to have anywhere from 3 to 10 ideas in that upper right-hand quadrant. That's what you need to put on your to-do list or assign to a team member, and get those things done and have the discipline not to chase the other things, because that's not the proverbial low-hanging fruit.
Right.
So that's what I actually recommend that everybody do, that you should do walking out of every event.
Yeah. And don't make it fun or easy or fun and hard, because fun doesn't matter. It's fun. Efficiency that we're going after here.
Yes. Fun is like the siren song of wasted cycles.
The fun comes later.
Yes.
After you get everything running properly.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay. So taking notes, you want to make sure that you are going through and highlighting with a star, with a highlighter, whatever, those things that really stood out to you as good ideas. Now, one thing that I would say that I do a lot when I'm taking notes in an environment like that is I will think of questions to ask myself or to research later that, you know, it just kind of it sparks that question. So I'll frequently have questions dotted in with all of those ideas and notes as well, so that I can do the same thing. I can go back and follow up on them and do the research to find out the answer to maybe move one of those things forward or not.
Yes. I do the same thing. I've got like a little shorthand for I sketch out like a light bulb if it's a great idea, or I just sketch out a bunch of squiggly lines if it's like an idea for content. It's just like writing in a book, just little squiggly lines, or a box is a checklist item like that needs to go. I need to assign that to my customer service person or what have you. And then I just sketch out a quick little book symbol. And then I secret hack, I have a book list on Amazon, and anytime somebody recommends a book to me, I just add it to my list. I'm like, oh, let
Yep.
me write that down. And then when it's the quarter that I'm studying, like such a nerd, last quarter, Q4, I studied quantum mechanics. It's like sounds like the craziest thing in the world, but it just kept coming up in conversations. Oh, that's super quantum, or oh, look at that, the quantum energy. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like I kind of have heard the word before, but I'm like, all right. So I went to my book list and said, all right, what books on my book list deal with quantum and quantum energy and quantum entanglement? And I broke my brain because that's what I studied throughout almost all of Q4. But that so and again, so just little hacks as I'm taking notes. And then when I'm sitting on the airplane, I do my 2x2 grid. I capture all of my to-dos, I capture all of my ideas, I capture all my content, and they all go in their own little homes.
Yep. Awesome. So that's what you do with the information once you've got it, and you've got more than just the action items. You've got those ideas and those questions as well.
Yes.
So when you get back, what does it look like?
Yeah, so the to-do items, what I always do, we use Trello. You could use Todoist, you could use Asana, you could use ClickUp. Talk to Andrew Moon if you use ClickUp. He's like a ClickUp genius. Tool doesn't matter. I mean, you could use Post-it notes. That's a little harder if your team is diverse, but you have to capture them on some kind of a to-do list, and then do delegate or delete. You've kind of decided I'm not going to delete them on, as you're debriefing. Now you need to decide who is going to do this. If you have a team, try to delegate as many things as you possibly can and only keep the things that are your superpower. Now that is a little for many of us, like I still have a very small team. We have a 2024 plan to get things off of Jennifer's plate, but we don't have team members for all of those things yet. So delegate where you can, and then put them on your to-do list, and then go through your normal prioritization. Like, what am I going to do this week, this month, this year? And not surprisingly, I've got a system for that too, but that's totally separate from the event system.
So we've talked about what to do there, what to do afterwards. What we didn't talk about yet, though, is what to do ahead of time to prep for the trip.
Yes. So that I love this question because it isn't something that we necessarily planned to talk about, but I do have what I encourage. I actually tell everybody before they come to my event, I send out an email and I'm like, you need to figure out what your biggest question is in your business. Now, it's not always a question. It could be a question or a concern or an opportunity. It could be an obstacle you're facing. But you have to know, I'm going to this event and I'm looking for content, or I'm looking for a person, or I'm looking for a vendor, or I'm looking for someone in the airport who can answer this burning problem for me. So for example, I was just talking to an MSP a couple of weeks ago, and he's with me in that we both believe there is some kind of an AI play, an AI offer or angle for MSPs. I don't know exactly what it is. I think it's probably some type of paid consulting. I don't think it necessarily has recurring revenue attached to it, but I do think that someone's going to figure it out, and I think it's going to be super lucrative. So I'm just picking that as an example. You may hate AI and think that it's going to take over the world. You're probably right. But today it's here and it's a tool, and let's leverage it. However, if you were like, I just can't quite figure out this AI thing, but I think there's something to it beyond helping with content and the things that most MSPs are doing, or many MSPs are doing today. If you were like, that's my biggest opportunity, like it keeps coming up, it wakes me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I would encourage you to journal that. Like, this event would be worth my time if I could find someone to bounce ideas off, or maybe someone who's 3 months ahead of me, or I run into someone at the airport who's reading a book on AI. That's important to do because our brains have something called a reticular activating system. It's a filter. It's literally there to keep us from going insane. And if we have not told that reticular activating system what is important to us, it will filter it out. It will say, Eric doesn't care about this. Let me not show it to him because there's too many inputs. It would drive you mad. So that reticular activating system is the part of your brain that is activated if you say, I'd really like to buy a purple Volkswagen Bug. And now, starting tomorrow, everywhere you go, you're going to see a purple Volkswagen Bug. That's because you told your brain, this is what you're looking for. You are now a heat-seeking mechanism, and you're looking for a solution to my problem. My problem is I need a purple bug. Or my problem is I'm looking for how to use AI for small businesses in some way related to consulting. Again, whatever your biggest question or opportunity is. And so when you go into an event saying, I am going into the event to get clarity on this one problem, you walk out of the event with clarity on that one problem.
Yep.
That's not always 100% solved. Say 80% of the time it's 100% solved, which is really much better than just walking out with 40 pages of notes, a whole bunch of to-dos, right, and the same number of problems you had walking in.
Because your brain is already going to be aligned to find ideas and answers that relate to the problem that you were thinking about ahead of time.
Correct.
And this kind of falls in line with what Keith is saying. He says, when I attend something like ConnectWise, I spend a lot of time choosing classes and presentations that he wants to see, and he spends time researching them before the event.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Before the event. That's when you need to be looking up these speakers,
yes,
looking up the vendors, because he also says he scopes out the show floor. He wants to, see what vendors are out there, see what vendors might be, relevant to that problem that he's trying to solve. And, and make, the other thing is, if you are a customer of one of these vendors, he mentions this, make sure that you're using 100% of the product, because that's how you're going to get the most value out of it. So lots of great things. I am going to throw this one up here because he also says he touches base with icons like Eric and Jennifer.
Love it. Hearts on Valentine's Day.
Yep. Love you too, Keith. So anyway, and I'm just going to put this one up here. It says, Eric makes an assumption that all of us have brains. I happen to know you do, sir, because, not only are you an MSP, but you're a PhD as well.
I don't think I'm not sure I've ever asked him about a topic that he is not knowledgeable in. I feel like right. I could ask him about nuclear physics and he'd start talking about the different kinds of submarines or something. Like, he's self-deprecating humor. There's a place for it, but he 100% has a brain.
So we've talked about what to do at events that you're going to. What about what not to do at events that you're going to?
Yeah, so I'm going to throw myself under the bus a little bit. People are really surprised to learn that I'm an introvert. I am. I promise you I am. And all that, it doesn't mean she's afraid to get on camera, because I'm not. It doesn't mean she's afraid to get up in front of a room and speak, because I'm not. To give me, the bigger the room, the happier I am. Actually, that's not true. The smaller the room, it doesn't matter. Anybody, if there's one person in the room, I'm happy to add value. But what it means is that it does tire me out to have conversations and to give. And so the way that I typically recharge is not the best way to get the most out of events, which is I go in my hotel room and I treat it like a man cave. I don't know, like a little woman spa. I don't know what the equivalent of a man cave is for a woman, but I do. Like 5 o'clock rolls around, and if there's a networking event, it's probably a 50-50 shot whether or not I'm going to attend. And then I go hidey hole in my room and I recharge for tomorrow. Last month, at the end of January, I went to an event with my peers. It was a bunch of coaching and consulting people, and somebody rented an Airbnb and they invited me to come. And I felt like it was rude to say no. I'm like, no, I'll just stay at the hotel while you're all having fun at the party Airbnb. And so
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I'll come. I just want you to know I may have to like go hide in my room and hibernate because I, sometimes get peopled out. And she's like, yeah, me too. And I'm like, uh-huh, right. But I went and I had a blast. I had an absolute blast. And I guess what I had under anticipated was that, okay, you're in the room all day with 30, 40, 50 people. Then you go back to the Airbnb and there's like 5 or 6 of you. And we got to know each other really well. It kind of felt like coming home at the end of a really busy work day. And you're just like, oh, I'm home. It's safe. It's comfortable. I can kick off my shoes. Some people put on their pajamas in the evening. So I don't recommend wearing your pajamas to a networking event at an MSP show, just to be super clear. But make the most of as many of those minutes as you have, and try your best to like recharge later. Recharge on the airplane, pull your hoodie up and put on your noise canceling headphones and just shut out the world. But try to make the most out of meeting, greeting, shaking hands, having conversations. And a trick is to look for those other people that are on the side of the room or in the corner, because they're probably as uncomfortable as you are. And if you walk up to them and you strike up a conversation, you are going to have a new best friend. So I guess choose wisely.
Well, and to be honest, that's how I met the first group of people that, I met at a trade show.
That's
Is we
awesome.
were all hanging out, not with the other groups, I guess. This was early on, but it's there's just something about those connections. I mean, I've made lifelong connections at shows.
Yes.
Not that I will ever leave this industry because I was made for this. But
It's like,
like
what else would
you,
we do?
but like you, I am an introvert
Yeah.
in terms of where my energy comes from, right? I love doing things like this. I wouldn't have done this. I wouldn't do the podcast or any of the other video content or getting up on stage like you do if I didn't love it. But being around a lot of people just for a long period of time, yeah, I need that downtime. So,
Yeah. 100%. Totally agree.
all right. So that really takes us to the next topic. But for just a second, I am going to let you take a break. It probably won't be very long, so I'm warning you now.
Okay.
I'll bring you back pretty quick. But I do need to give a shout out to our sponsor, so I'm going to do that real quick. All right, everybody. So tonight's sponsor is SuperOps. SuperOps is a RMM PSA built on AI. It's, they really tout it as something for fast growing MSPs. And because it's a PSA and RMM built together, it does have some advantages over a PSA and RMM that maybe just have an integration. They do work more tightly together. So if you want more information, if you're looking for a new PSA or a new RMM or the combination of both, check them out. Use our link, atmsp.link/SuperOps. There we go. I do
Love it.
have some recommendations for StreamYard, by the way, because that's one of the things I loved about Ecamm is the fact that I could just press buttons and go to the scenes that I had already designed instead of clicking on the scene, then adding people back in.
StreamYard does have hotkeys. I don't know if it
They
would
do
do
now, but it won't
it.
do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Yeah, I knew that was a new-ish feature. So of course you've played with that. Why does that not surprise me?
Yeah, because you nerd out on notes, although I nerd out on notes too. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I actually had a key for those little symbols that you were talking about earlier
Oh yeah.
in the front of every notebook.
Yep.
Anyway,
I actually put it in the front of my workbook for all of my guests at my event. And I take like 2 minutes to be like, that's a light bulb. Put that next to your ideas. That's a book. If someone says this is a great book to solve the problem you're looking to solve, like I give everybody my key. So 100%, totally there with you.
All right. So we're going to switch gears from events that you should attend to events that you should put on, that you
Yes,
should host.
I love it.
So, Jennifer, what's some of the compelling reasons in your mind for an MSP to host their own events?
Yeah, so number one, again, I've got this unique ability to start to pick up on trends. And what I have seen is that ConnectWise talks about events being the biggest way that their partners are growing. Kaseya has a similar statistic. I haven't looked at SuperOps and all the other companies that are out there, but events work. And I believe part of the reason that events work is that as humans, we are made to crave relationships. We are relational beings. And especially because of the pandemic, I think with the rise of AI, people are craving human interaction more than ever before. And so, for that reason, events are great. So we have statistics from ConnectWise and Kaseya saying events are great. The second thing is many MSPs are looking for ways to become thought leaders in their space. How do I show up? How do I provide value? How do I do something that has an offer at the end without being super sleazy and pitchy? How do I just show up in the industry or in the community and just have fun with my clients, with my prospects, with the movers and shakers and influencers in my community? And so the answer to all of those questions is events. So inside of my coaching group, we actually have an entire events playbook because it's something I think every MSP, maybe almost every MSP should be doing, is having a regular cadence of events. Ideally once a month. I would settle for once a quarter and be out there in the community adding value in terms of content or in terms of fun to the people around you. So we can unpack this at any more depth if you'd like to, but that's why events is
Yeah.
that they work.
Well, and I would say from kind of my analytical standpoint that there's two reasons that I think they work as well, two additional reasons, and that is number one, they scale better than individual meetings.
They do.
You can get 10 prospects into a lunch and learn in the same time that it takes to meet with one or two individually.
Yes.
So you gain efficiencies by being able to present to an entire room rather than just one person at a time. It also gives you the opportunity to be a little more polished with your presentation. You can have AV, you can have, a nice presentation built out in PowerPoint that you show on a screen rather than on a little laptop. So
Yes.
that's one reason. The second reason is that I've always felt like if you are willing to do the things that other people aren't willing to do, that they will be more effective in
Yes.
most cases,
Agreed.
because hard things generally produce better results.
Yeah. Hard
And
things do
so,
not attract a crowd.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Agreed. Agreed. And then the one thing you didn't mention is that potentially, probably not for your first event or two, but you could hire someone off of Fiverr or a local community college, or there's my mind just lost it, but if you want the name of it, contact me after the show and I'll find it for you. But there's a it's almost like a Angie's List, but it's a gig economy that's local. Hire a local videographer and a local photographer. So you can now have a video of your session. You have photos of you speaking at the front of the room and ask them to get angled down so there's like all these heads in the way of you so it looks like your room is packed. Like there's ways to angle it, like think about angles and things like that. Now you've got headshots to be like, yeah, of course I'm a speaker, you should let me come to speak at your event. And then if you have a video of it, you can splice that up into micro content. You can take the entire thing and put it on your YouTube channel. You can take that whole thing and create a blog out of it and then point the YouTube video to your blog. And now YouTube is pointing to your website, which is really good from a Google perspective. Google owns YouTube. And so there's lots of things you can do with an event. Yes,
yeah.
of course, much of it is about lead generation and list growth, which we can talk about as well. But I think just about every MSP should be doing events. The ones that aren't, that I don't recommend events to, are the ones that if I was speaking to them one-on-one, they wouldn't be able to like look me in the eye. And we all know that's the exception to the rule, though. That's what people think of when they think of techs and geeks. But the reality is most techs and geeks are pretty friendly and they can look people in the eye. It's the minority that cannot. And for those people, it might be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah. So lots of great reasons about why. So let's get into the how.
Yes.
What types of formats, content, whatever you want to call it, works best for an MSP local event? And is there a difference when you're presenting to clients to expand revenue versus speaking to prospects to land new revenue?
Yeah, so great questions. So I like to think of this as two different options. We have educational events and then we have fun events. And they both have a place in your marketing arsenal. They both have a goal. You should be measuring the effectiveness or the ROI or the results from each of them, but they do fit a different purpose. So let's talk educational first. So educational events, these are things like lunch and learns or webinars or seminars. Those are purely educational. Typically, they're going to be 30 to 60 minutes, and you're going to have mostly education, but please have a call to action at the end. And so the best way to think about this is, if we think back to like high school, we were writing topic sentences. That's kind of your title of your talk. And then we had 3 or 4 core paragraphs. Those are your 3 or 4 core points of your talk. And then all of those, like picture a dotted line going down to the call to action. There should be a straight line from your subject to the call to action. There should be a straight dotted line from each of your 3 or 4 core points that support the need for somebody to ask for the thing that you want them to ask for. So educational with a call to action, that's kind of the first category. And those are great for existing clients where you want to upsell them, maybe a security solution, maybe an AI consulting gig. So existing clients, good there. Those are also good for your prospect list. So your house list or your list of people that you're constantly marketing to, which Eric, hold me honest. I want to talk about lists for a minute when I get done talking about both of these two types of events, because the list is going to make or break the effectiveness of this tactic that we're talking about. But there's also some tricks if you don't have a list. So I want to talk about that. But let's talk about educational. So educational, good for clients. Educational, good for prospects. I don't like to usually mix the prospects and the clients at a single event, because let's say that you're talking about security. You have to keep explaining, now clients, even though you're paying for something, you're not necessarily paying for security. So let's talk afterwards. And then those of you who aren't clients, you probably don't have any of this. It's just a confusing message. And so just from a messaging standpoint, it's easier to keep the clients and the prospects separate. So that's educational. Fun events are fun. And if you have someone on your team who is wired to be the people person, the party planner, this role, or at least some of the planning, the initial planning, would fall on that person. And you're looking for things like a paint and sip night or a whiskey and wings. I saw someone doing that a couple of weeks ago. Or brew. Somebody did brew.
Brew and Q?
Maybe someone did something around Halloween and they did a playoff of booze and something. And it was, obviously they spelled booze, but they emphasized the boo part of it for Halloween. Right. But it can be like anything that's fun. Like it's just a fun event. I actually flew out to Texas and a vendor brought me in and we did a how to smoke. It was a whole 4-hour thing on how to smoke brisket. We learned how to, what different kinds of smokers, different kinds of wood chips, how to smoke a brisket, how to trim a brisket. And then we were doing it. It was very hands-on, but we were there for like 4 hours. So you want to talk about pretty in-depth conversations. Like we all knew about each other's kids and family and businesses and, the last fight we had with our spouse. I mean, like we got to know each other pretty in-depth in 4 hours. And then we got to eat really good brisket. So that's an option as well. So just kind of the sky's the limit. If you're doing an educational event, you'll want to measure number of people who registered, showed up, and asked for that call to action. And then if you're doing a fun event, it's simply new people added to our list, people who came, and then you might want to measure, it's a little fuzzier, but solid conversations, like possible sales conversations to follow up with in a day or two or next week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm holding you to your lists.
I love it.
Comment.
Yes. So the list it's the biggest challenge with almost any marketing tactic, and events is no different, because if you don't have a list, then who are you going to invite to your webinar? Who are you going to invite to your, the best planned event in the world? If you have 12 people on your list, like, yes, you could leverage Facebook ads. There's, paid ads. There's some strategies you can use, but the best strategy is your house list. And so my encouragement is to start your list now. Most MSPs actually don't have a list. And so everybody you talk to should go on your list. Elevator conversations on your list. Shake hands with someone at Starbucks, they go on your list. You go to the chamber, the BNI, you create a quote, you dialogue at a whatever, it doesn't matter. They all go on your list. They know how to unsubscribe. They know how to right click and mark as junk. They got you. So add them to your list. Just be growing that list always. But if you don't have a list and you're like, I kind of want to do an event, that kind of sounds fun, but I don't have a list, what can I do? Well, that's where you leverage your circle. Hopefully you have a circle of influence. You have people that you know that would do you a solid, and they maybe have a list that you can say, hey, why don't you and I host an axe throwing? I'll cover the cost. You invite your list. That's if you have zero list. If you have a little list and they have a little list, you can be like, hey, why don't we each try to get 4 or 5 people? You get 5 of your people, I'll get 5 of my people. Let's go do a paint and sip night, whatever. So you can start to collaborate, and now you start to have really good friends that are in non-competing local businesses, and then you can build each other up and start to grow through collaboration.
Yep. And I love that idea. I used to actually do a lot of joint venture marketing, which is what I called it back then, with other business owners, frequently clients of mine, that we would do that exact same thing. And it would really depend on, the size of each person's list. If they were roughly equal, then we would share the costs. If they were lopsided one way or the other, then the person with the smaller list would bear the brunt of the cost.
Sure.
And I think those work out really, really well.
And if you think about it, like you almost don't, if it's a fun event, especially, you don't want 50 people there. Like you want it to be small enough that you can have small conversations with everybody and shake hands and exchange business cards, find out what kind of business they have, maybe make a connection. Oh, wait, you golf? That guy over there said he golfs too. I don't golf, but let me introduce you. You guys should probably know each other. Bob, this is Richard. Richard, Bob, y'all golf. Have fun. I don't know anything about golf, but you guys do run along and have a conversation. And now you're a connector. And it doesn't take long before people are like, oh my goodness, you're a super connector. Eric, you know everybody. And you're like, well, I've just strategically made it like almost a mission to meet everybody in my community. And so I do know a lot of people in the community because it's part of my strategy. Yeah. So no reason that people that are listening to this cannot take action on that.
Yeah, exactly. And, you mentioned business cards, and, business cards, while I love them because I love designing them and I love just using a real business card, a lot of people don't anymore. And in that case, in my opinion, LinkedIn is your friend, right? Because most likely if you've met them in a social environment like this, they are going to let you connect on LinkedIn. You can even ask them right then and there. It's very easy to do. If you both have your phones, you can bring it up. There's actually a QR code that you can just scan. And now you don't even need their email address because you can message them on LinkedIn because now you're connected.
Yes.
And then that can build up to getting their phone number, getting their, email address later on as you build that relationship and become somebody that they know is not going to spam you and has actually valuable, information and stuff to share.
Yes. I still prefer to get the business card though, because I don't own LinkedIn, right? Like LinkedIn could kick me off. My LinkedIn account could get compromised. My, like, whatever. LinkedIn
Yeah.
could throttle you, right? Like they just did this within the last year that you can only message X number of people per day, week, month, whatever it was. Whereas I can always email my list, right? So, but you're right. Some people don't carry business cards anymore. So, yes, definitely having LinkedIn in your back pocket, no pun intended. Pull out your phone, do the QR code, connect. I bet you could even tap some of the phones. You can probably even tap now, like you can tap contacts and trade your contact cards with each other. So yeah.
And by the way, so when you said that a lot of MSP owners don't even have a list, I don't know if everybody saw my face at that moment or not.
I didn't, because I was looking at the camera. Give me your face again.
I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was like, I think it was kind of a cringe, like, because in this day and age, there is no reason. Like Google has contact lists, right? It has an address book. If you want to take it one step further, spend $15 a month on a CRM.
Yes.
Now, there are more expensive ones.
Sure.
There are probably cheaper ones. The one that I use is $15 a month.
I mean, a spreadsheet is a list, right? Like the bucket doesn't matter. But I was talking to a startup MSP, I think it was last week, and he's like, "Hey, I'm in startup mode. I'd love to hire you, but I know you work with companies that are, in excess of $500,000 a year. But can you give me some free advice?" And I'm like, 100%. I said, start building your list. And I say, no, that sounds really weird. Like you're in startup mode. I'm like, you're going to talk to somebody this week. If you're pounding the pavement or you're, you're at Starbucks or you're bowling or you're at church, like, hey, you're starting a business. What is this? Get their information, get their business card, or, ask for their data, capture that data and put it in a list. And I said, because I will talk to MSPs that are 7, 12, 20 years old. And they're like, yeah, I have a list of, and on average, it's 200 names. 200 is like nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you, Mr. Startup MSP, could surpass them in well under a year.
Right.
And I said, and then you get in the discipline of doing that and think about where your business will be in 7, 12, and 20 years. You'll have 4,000 names on your database. Like no one will be able to compete with you. And I would argue that if you have a prospect database of 4,000 names that are all local to you, and on any one day, 2% or 4% of the people, or 20% or 40% are reading your emails, you no longer have a marketing problem.
Right. Yep, for sure. And by the way, Keith points out correctly that most of the major vendors give you a CRM, i.e. ConnectWise, Datto, et cetera. And then also, I forgot about this one, but yes, the Tech Tribe gives you a CRM if you are a member of the Tech Tribe, which 100% recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. Grow. Yeah. What Nigel and his team are doing is amazing. So I agree. Tech Tribe, Growably. Yeah. So get a CRM or use a spreadsheet or get a $15 one if you want to pay for it, but start building your list. That is a prospect. Like 3 years ago, I said, why are we having a conversation? Why are you looking to increase your MRR? And he said 3 words to me that have stuck with me for years. He said, healthy things grow. And I'm like, yeah. So healthy companies grow. Your list is only healthy if you're always adding new names to the top, because people leave, they unsubscribe, they age out, they mark you as junk. So you always have to be backfilling it with healthy names, new names. That's how you know that your marketing system is healthy.
Yeah. All right. So because, we've covered a lot here. We've covered what to do. What are some of the things that an MSP should kind of be aware of, watch out for, the gotchas, the things they shouldn't do?
Specific to events, one gotcha is don't have an educational event without a call to action. That I see that frequently. So that's one. Another gotcha is don't, when your event ends, let's say you have a webinar from 12 to 1, your job is not done at 1 o'clock. It's good. Webinar's done. Let's all go to lunch. Your job is not done. Number one, you have prospects to follow up with, and they get cold very, very, very quickly. I can't tell you the number of conversations I've had where someone says, yeah, I did a webinar. There were 40 people on the webinar and 10 people raised their hands. And I'm like, oh, well, how's the follow-up going? And they're like, well, it was only 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, you had hot leads 3 weeks. They're not hot anymore. It's like when you take a cake out of the oven, it doesn't stay hot for 3 weeks. It just doesn't. Like if you want hot brownies, you've got a pretty narrow window of time. It's probably 45 to 55 minutes. Thankfully, prospects stay warm a little longer than brownies, but not by much. And so that webinar ends, you've got the time, it's ticking. It's almost like a ticking time bomb. So that is a very common mistake, is that MSPs miss how urgently the follow-up needs to happen, because 1 o'clock, the webinar ends, they hit end on the, on their webinar, Zoom, whatever, and they are now bombarded. Their team and the phone's been ringing and they have 47 emails and the roof is leaking and they forgot to renew their lease. And they don't remember what you talked about 2 hours ago, let alone if you follow up with them in 3 weeks, like you've lost them. So quick follow up. So make sure you have a call to action, and then quick follow up. Those are probably the biggest mistakes that I see in relation to events.
Okay.
And not leveraging it. I guess that's a third. We talked about that already, though, is making sure that you are capturing, recording it. If it's a webinar, just hit record on your webinar software. If it's in person, recording it. And then that can wait. The repurposing can wait a week or two. How are we going to repurpose this? And set like a crazy goal, like we want to figure out 40 ways to repurpose this content. You might only get 15. But if you set your goal at 15, you'll only find 7. So, set your goals high, and then make sure that you are hitting record. I did have a client that they showed up for their webinar, forgot to hit record. Everybody was there. They did a great job. They think they can't go back and watch it because it wasn't recorded. So to his credit, he took a 30-minute break, got a drink of water, and like, all right, I'm going to do it again. I'm in the zone. My adrenaline's pumping. I'm good. I already know the content. So he sat down and welcomed everyone and just faked the webinar. Gets to the end, and he forgot to hit record again. And I'm like, so what'd you do? And he's like, I didn't do it a third time. He's like, I waited a couple of days. Then I did it a third time, but I had a reminder set in my calendar that went off and said, remember to hit record this time, Steve. So listen, everything is a test. Everything is a learning lesson. And he learned the hard way to make sure that record was actually happening. So those are the kind of hard lessons that you learn, but it's part of life.
Well, and that content is so valuable, right? Because you can use it in so many different ways. You can have it permanently, so that it's on your YouTube. They can watch the entire thing. Somebody watches your sales pitch on YouTube. Who's going to complain about that, right?
Yes.
I mean, it just needs to be there. You've done the work. Let it continue to work for you. But
Correct.
The other thing is that micro content that you mentioned. And there is a website. There's probably more than one. The one that I've used in the past is opus.ai, I believe.
Okay. Yep.
And what it allows you to do is it allows you to post a video, and then it'll chop it up into 30 to 60 second YouTube short, Instagram reel, FaceTime or Facebook reels, all of those different formats, that vertical size, everything. It'll do the whole thing for you. It will put the captions on. It will put emojis on there. It'll even, if you wanted to, it'll pull over B-roll. So
nice.
You can create from, say, a 30-minute webinar, you can easily create 5 to 6 pieces of micro content that now go out on your social media.
I love it. We've been playing with Descript. And Descript is not as automated as Opus. Like my understanding is Opus is pretty automated. Don't get me wrong, Descript is great. You're essentially editing the text. So you're like highlighting this text is what I want, and then it creates a clip out of it. So it's still very fast and easy, but we may play with Opus because we're just doing a month to month right now with Descript.
I like it.
Okay, well, we'll give it a shot. I'll let you know what we think.
So I have a question from Keith. He says, do you create events based on prospect size and contract value? Because Keith has a very unique business. He deals with usually larger clients, very customized contracts, agreements, solutions, etc., that typically want more of that one-on-one engagement. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, so my gut instinct is saying, depending on contract value, let me finish my sentence, then I'll go back and interrupt myself. Depending on contract value, this may be a good one-on-one play. So like a nice steak restaurant, Keith, like I know you like a nice steak restaurant, cigars, etc. That might be a really good play to do that because what you're doing is so custom. It's going to be difficult, probably not impossible, but difficult to come up with a content topic that's going to relate to everyone, or even 5 or 10 of your prospects, but not impossible. So for example, if you're creating custom apps, I'm just making up something that's a little bit outside of the box, maybe your content is 7 things every small business owner needs to know before creating a custom app. Like that's horrible copywriting, but you get the idea. That could make content, that could become a training content, a webinar piece, and then you could do one-to-many. That's the only thing I don't like about a one-on-one really nice steak dinner is that it's still one-on-one. And the beauty of events is what Eric said earlier, which is one-to-many. But it's going to be a little tougher if you're delivering custom solutions. But I bet you and I could put our heads together and whiteboard out some ideas on ways that you could leverage events, even if the end result is custom. Like, okay, the end result is custom, but the step before that is probably your sales call. Let's name it something a little bit better. And then what are some questions they need to have answered before they will schedule the sales call? And you can provide just enough complexity that they need that sales call, better named, to help make it not as complex. And it's during that sales call that you then can do your magic. So I don't think it's impossible. I need to have that conversation with you. And that would be fun just to whiteboard it out and find a solution. And then I know you'll execute on it and tell me how it goes. And that could be cool.
Awesome. So we're getting really close to the top of the hour. This went, as I expected, actually. I knew that this was going to be a lot to talk about. So at the end here, let's talk a little bit more about what people can do to learn more about your frameworks, your ideas, your methodologies, and this Ultimate IT Growth Conference thing.
Yeah, so the Ultimate IT Growth Conference, if you go to mspsalesrevolution.com/ultimate, that will tell you everything about the event. So it's going to explain in 2.5 days, we're taking you from point A to point B. What is point A? If you're there, then you're going to recognize yourself. And if the point B is where you want to get to, which is $5 million in annual revenue, of which much of it is cybersecurity, if that's your point B, then this is the best event to go to. It's very hands-on. You get a lot of input from myself and from the team that we're going to put in place. We're bringing in several $5 million MSPs and $4.5 million MSPs to be in the room because it just ties into that whole reticular activating system that we talked about earlier. You have to know what success looks like. And so we want you rubbing shoulders with the people that are a little bit ahead of your path so that you can chase them. So you know what it is that you're looking for. So go to mspsalesrevolution.com/ultimate. And then on that site, you can poke around and find out more information about my frameworks. But that event is a great way to just learn what I do, see if we click. Right now, the tier 1 tickets are $97. That covers every breakfast, every lunch. And then if you upgrade to VIP, there's an extra dinner one night. And I highly recommend it. If you are driven and determined and you want that $5 million in security revenue, even if you're at 100K today, or you're at 500K today, or you're at $1 million today, but that $5 million is what you want, come to my event. It is going to be amazing.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for joining me tonight and sharing all of this information about events on both sides of the fence. And I think this is knowledge that they can take away and actually do something with at this
Agreed.
point. So
I
really appreciate
appreciate the
it.
time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. All right. Well, I am going to put you back in the green room for a second while I get us finished out. All right, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us again tonight for another All Things MSP Live. Really do appreciate it. I do want to make one more call out to our sponsor for tonight's episode. That is SuperOps, the AI-powered RMM PSA designed for fast-growing MSPs. Built for future, built for growth. Learn more at atmsp.link/SuperOps or check out their Super Summits that they're running in 2024. They have 6 of them all over the country. You can find out more about those, when they are, where they are, all that stuff at atmsp.link/Super Summit. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Have a great week. And I'll see you next time.